Ethan West has always been a man of rooms that themselves have already talked about victory. His penthouse on the top floor of a glass skyscraper looked out over the city like a conductor watching an orchestra. Wide windows, soft marble, lights that danced on the floor. He loved it when people came in and stopped talking for a second, not out of respect, but from the fact that everything here was calibrated to a seamless beauty. The fabric of the sofas, the smell of perfume, the glasses sparkling, as if they contained more than just wine. Ethan was used to the world accepting his outer frame, a well-trimmed beard, an expensive suit with fine dark silk that flowed with every movement like a promise. He often thought about how easy it was to control the world when it perceived you as a finished work of art, and not as a person with cracks inside. And there was a special thrill in this feeling, the feeling of power and control that he had craved since childhood, when his father taught him to set goals and achieve them without regrets. That night, the terrace was hot with laughter and music, a party for a select few: investors, models, lifestyle bloggers with fake smiles, and people who had money to fulfill other people's scripts. Ethan watched them with the equanimity that comes with getting what you want. When he ordered a rare wine, he knew it would be the first and best. He was the center, not because he was looking for it, but because people put him there out of habit. Julian, an old friend from university days, approached him with a glass in his hand and eyes full of that envy that it is impossible to open. "Will you ever get married just for the sake of science?" "What is it?" he asked, half joking. His voice resonated in the air like a track in headphones at high volume. A provocation, nothing more. Ethan chuckled. For him, marriage was just another transaction, neat and transparent. One day, his father told him, "Get married like an investor. Calculate the risks, assess the returns." He remembered it as an instruction. That's why Julian's joke seemed like a challenge to him. At the most delicious moment, when the applause in the room was almost audible as the background, he drank and made a bet. "I can marry any woman in this room," he said as lightly as if he were talking about buying another car, "even on the one that is far from the beauty standards. And I'll make her happy anyway." For 6 months, the words fell like a coin on the table. There were whispers all around. For many, it seemed like a funny game, another curiosity in the series of his tricks. But as often happens, there was a side to the joke that could only be seen up close. Maya was at the end of the room. She did not belong to these mirrored patterns. She was sitting on a chair, holding a piece of napkin in her hands and clutching a cup of black coffee as if everything else was in it. She had soft features, much softer than the ones the public was used to, and the folds of her clothes didn't try to hide her body, but rather accepted it the way a werewolf accepts the night. Her hair was gathered carelessly, and when she smiled, softly, almost furtively, wrinkles appeared at the corners of her eyes, which told stories much more interesting than the clean contours of the models. Her gaze was calm but attentive. She watched people like an incomprehensible play, where each player performs his role, not realizing its meaninglessness. Maya noticed how people are afraid of real unpreparedness, laughter without a script, tears without a reason. She knew the price of the outside world and the price of inner freedom, and one did not require the other. When Julian came up with the idea, Ethan's gaze swept across the room and settled on her. Not because Maya was a doll or stood out, but rather because there was something stable in her gaze, something that did not want to match. Ethan, who thought people were predictable, found himself wondering, what would be the price if he made a bet? He approached Maya with the easy confidence that his audience was waiting for. It seemed to him that this was just another scene. "I'm sorry," he said, smiling as if he was confirming the role for himself. "May I ask you to dance? Or do you prefer to stay out of the game?" Maya raised her head. Her smile was surprisingly sharp, like a knife. She could have refused, offended, and left, and it would have been considered a victory. Instead, she responded with words that sought neither protection nor submission. "I don't like dancing for the sake of a performance." Her voice was soft, but there was a hint of steel in it. "But I can for the coffee, or for the sake of conversation." The conversation started simply, about the weather, about music, about how Ethan just ironically looks like an antique hero in a suit. But the longer they talked, the clearer it became. Maya was not an empty page for writing. It was a library with bookmarks. Her humor wasn't shallow. It hid observations and wounds. She told me how her mother once tried to cut her hair in fashion, and how it felt like someone was trying to reduce your own shape to a manageable standard. She talked about books, about dreams, about wanting to have a house where things would smell like coffee and paper and not someone else's opinion. Ethan listened and noticed that his habitual confidence rattled like a pen that suddenly stopped writing. He realized that he was betting not on the image, on the outer shell, but on the risk that would be gained by a clash of characters. Ethan took her hand, not too confidently, but not too carefully either. His skin was warm but dry, like dry wood. Maya didn't flinch, just squeezed his fingers lightly, as if testing how ready he was to be real. She wasn't smiling in the usual, obligatory sense. The smile came from inside, almost invisible, but warming. "Do you always behave like this with people?" "What is it?" she finally asked. "How's that?" He grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. "It's like you're playing, not living." Ethan paused. It was the first time he had heard the truth spoken, not in a jab or mockery, but in a quiet, even voice that did not require retaliatory defense. "I'm used to a world where winning is all that matters," he said, choosing his words carefully. "And love." Her voice was flat, but there was a slight spark in it. "Love?" He laughed softly, almost to himself. "This concept is for people who live a simpler life. I'm living according to the plan." She looked at him, at this plan that stretched like a metal chain, ready to hold him in a safe cage. "Maybe we should change the plan," she said, "or at least open the door to let fresh air in." He didn't know what to say. He didn't usually listen to advice. He usually acted. But her words remained like a thin crack in the glass through which the light passed. Later, on the terrace, where the lights of the city were playing, Ethan watched her. She was standing at the edge, holding a mug of tea, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the lanterns. He remembered his youth, when he still believed that status and appearance were the keys to happiness. And suddenly he realized that his world was small, like a box in which everything that was considered valuable was placed. And she was out of the box. He approached cautiously, as if not wanting to ruin this moment. "Why aren't you afraid to be yourself?" he asked. "What's to be afraid of?" She replied calmly. "Are you afraid that the world won't accept you?" "He will accept only a part. I choose to be full, at least for myself." Ethan thought about it. He spent his whole life hiding behind a mask of success, behind suits and credit cards, behind applause, behind external brilliance. But this simplicity and honesty seemed dangerously attractive to him. "I've never met people like that," he confessed. "Probably because no one is looking for them," she replied. In the evening, when the guests had already left, Maya sat down on the sofa, stretched out her legs, and opened an old book that no one was paying attention to. Ethan was watching her from the chair across from her. He thought about how strange it was to feel worried, not knowing what exactly. "Do you read often?" he asked. "Every day if I can," she said. "Reading is like talking to a person who will never betray." He smiled, but it was a sad smile. There was a truth in her words that he himself had never followed. He understood, this is not a game. And don't bet. It's an opportunity to see what it means to be alive. The next day, Ethan decided to test himself. He invited Maya for a walk in the park, where autumn leaves fell smoothly on the sidewalks. He didn't want it to look like a date. He wanted to see if he could see the world through her eyes. "Do you see them?" "What is it?" she asked, pointing to the leaves that were swirling in the air. "They seem to fly randomly, but in fact, everyone falls where they should be." Ethan looked and noticed for the first time that autumn wasn't just a backdrop for photos and parties. "She's alive." He felt a strange warmth, a sensation that was neither for sale nor for purchase. "I think I want to learn to see the world in a different way," he said softly. "Learning is the first step." She smiled, but the smile was calm, almost defiant. "But don't promise too fast. The world likes to destroy in a hurry." And in that moment, Ethan realized, this game, this bet, had turned into something more. He couldn't call it love, but he felt that it was gradually creeping up to his heart, or rather, to his silence inside. In the evening, when the city froze in the soft glow of the lanterns, Ethan invited Maya to go to his personal library. It was hidden behind an unmarked door, a quiet hideout where old books smelled of leather and dust, and armchairs invited you to sit for hours. "I've never been here," Maya said, looking around. Her fingers slid over the spines without tearing the tangle of words and pages. "This is a place for those who love silence," Ethan said. He sat down across from her, watching her carefully select a book. And you seemed to love her. She looked up. There was that slight smile in them that he already knew, not hidden, but careful. I like to listen to stories where there is no rush, and people who can keep quiet around you without making it awkward. Ethan crouched closer. His heart was beating faster than he expected. He realized that silence might not be emptiness, but a signal of trust. I've never thought about silence like that, he confessed. In my life, silence is a space between things that needs to be filled. And now, Maya asked, now I think that sometimes silence is the most important thing. It shows who you really are. Maya smiled a little wider. She chose a thick book of poetry and sat down next to him on the sofa. Ethan noticed how her shoulders relaxed, how her breathing became slow and even. You know, she said, sometimes people are afraid of the truth about themselves. They put on masks and walk through life like on a catwalk, where everyone is watching and appreciating. I don't want to live like this. Ethan was silent. He looked at her and thought about how difficult it had been to wear a mask all his life. And now someone was openly standing in front of him without it. And it was scarier than any bet, any risk. Are you ever afraid that your honesty will ruin everything? What is it? He asked softly. She looked up at him, her eyes shining in the soft lamplight. Sometimes I'm afraid. But I'm even more afraid of losing myself for the sake of someone else's opinion. He realized that this was what made them different from the other people around him. She chose herself over the game, and he almost always chose the game. The night was fading into the depths. Everything was quiet, except for the occasional sound of cars and the distant barking of dogs. Ethan got up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city, which seemed just as meaningless and alive at the same time. I thought I could predict everything, he said. But with you, I do not know what will happen tomorrow. Maya came closer and lightly put her hand on his shoulder. It's okay, she said. Sometimes the unknown is better than predictability. And for the first time, Ethan realized that betting, and winning didn't mean anything if there was someone around who made him see the world differently. The next morning, he woke up feeling strangely lightheaded. Not because I won the bet, but because for the first time I wasn't trying to win everything. He made coffee, put it on the windowsill, where the sun penetrated through the glass panels, and saw Maya, who was still asleep on the couch with a book in her hands. He stood and watched her, realizing that his familiar world had turned upside down. Now victory was not about dominating or setting records, but about seeing and understanding. And although he couldn't call it love yet, he knew one thing. A life that starts with honesty is always longer than any bet. Ethan and Maya have officially become husband and wife. On paper, formally, but for the world it was already a loud signal. A millionaire married an informal woman. Newspapers were discussing the bet, friends were whispering, and investors were betting that this marriage would last a maximum of 6 months. Inside the Manhattan apartment, everything remained the same. Glass walls, high ceilings, expensive abstract paintings. But now, this expanse was filled with her presence. Maya put mugs on the windowsill, left books on the coffee table, and carefully hung her blankets. It all seemed like small things, but to Ethan they were more important than any marble or designer furniture. Do you really think people will believe that? What is it? She asked one day, watching herself in the mirror. She was trying on a simple dress, but even it seemed alien in a world of glitter and rhinestones. They'll believe you if you play a role, he replied, smiling slightly. But I don't care. Don't you always care? Her eyes were wary. I care about what I see, not what is discussed behind my back, he said, coming closer. His voice was soft, without the usual irony. She looked at him and realized that for the first time he was speaking sincerely. And it scared her almost as much as it attracted her. In the first weeks, they studied each other. Habits, rhythms of life, strange little things that had previously gone unnoticed. Ethan was used to getting up at 5 in the morning, and Maya could sleep until 8, covered with a blanket and a book. He would get up quietly, make coffee, and sit next to her, watching her slowly wake up, as if it were a ritual rather than an accident. She, in turn, noticed how he checked his to-do list every morning, called on work issues, but at the same time tried not to make noise so as not to disturb her peace. Can you just be here and keep quiet? What is it? She asked one day, sitting on the balcony. I'm learning, he smiled. I'm learning to see life without reports. In the evening, Ethan invited her to dinner at a small restaurant on the coast. Not luxurious, without cameras and guests, but just a place that smelled of fish, sea wind, and candles. Why here? Maya asked, looking at the old wooden table. Because there are no rules here. It's just us and the food, he said. They talked about a lot of things. Books, childhood, and what it means to be honest with yourself. Ethan listened to her stories of hardship, laughter, regrets, and dreams, and with each word his habitual confidence rattled more and more. He understood. She was real, not for show, not for betting, not for proof. And this feeling grew inside him, making him doubt everything that had seemed important before. But with it came doubts and fears that were rarely discussed. Don't you think it's all too fast? Maya asked one evening, holding onto the railing of the stairs leading to the terrace. Quickly, what is it? He asked. What's too fast for you? When people pretend to love you because you're useful to them, she said. Do you love me? Or are you just curious about who I really am? Ethan paused. He wasn't ready to give an honest answer. Not because he didn't love her, but because for the first time in his life, his feelings didn't fit into the scenario he controlled. I want to understand, he said softly. Then you'll have to be honest, she replied. And sometimes with myself. The next morning, Ethan woke up before Maya and stood at the window, watching the city. There was a worry in his head. What will happen if the society does not accept this union? Should friends and colleagues laugh? Should he go back to his old habits on his own? But when Maya came into the room with a cup of coffee, smiling the way only she can, he realized. The fear was still there, but now it's less than the desire to be with her. Do you think about what people will say? What is it? She asked, sitting down next to him. Sometimes, he admitted, but I think more about what I think. And at that moment, they realized, a paper wife is just the beginning. The true test had just begun. This week has been a real challenge for Ethan and Maya. On Monday, he was forced to meet with business partners who were still discussing his bet marriage. Did you really marry her? What is it? One of the investors asked, playing with a gold ring on the table. Is this entertainment? Or a test for us? Ethan said nothing. He realized that the usual confidence was no longer working. Previously, he would have grinned and dismissed the question as an unnecessary document. Now, the words seemed as sharp as knives. This is a personal matter, he said flatly, trying to hide how his inner world was starting to tremble. Personal? What is it? The other asked skeptically. A millionaire marries a woman for a bet, and then says personal? You're either a genius or a madman. Ethan looked at them and realized that the world divides people into categories: winners, losers, interesting, and boring. And he found himself in a state where the usual categories were collapsing. Maya was no longer a status mistake. She was a challenge requiring inner honesty. Maya noticed his tension at home. Are you worried about their opinions? What is it? She asked, arranging the books on the shelves. Honestly, he sat down next to her, clutching a cup of coffee. Yes, but not like before. Not for my reputation, but for how it changes me. Maya smiled. Her laugh was light, but there was wisdom in it. You see, you're already starting to think about yourself, not what others will say about you. Ethan nodded, and a strange warmth spread through his chest. Not power, not triumph, but a feeling he couldn't name yet. They were cooking dinner together in the kitchen. Maya was chopping vegetables. Ethan was frying fish. The air smelled of olive oil, onions, and small worries. You know, she said, I never thought I'd live in an apartment like this. It's all luxurious and alien. But if there's someone you can just be with, it doesn't matter anymore. Everything used to be important to me. Every detail, every look, every number, Ethan confessed. Now I understand that there are things that are not measured by success or money. Love? Maya asked cautiously. He looked at her. Love. That word sounded strange in his head. He wasn't sure if he was experiencing her, but he knew he wanted to be there, to hear, to watch. I don't know yet, he said softly, but I want to know. The next day, Maya decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. She returned home late at night, bringing with her a bag of fresh rolls. People are watching on the street, she said, smiling. They evaluate, they whisper. So what? Ethan asked. And that we can choose, either play by their rules or live by our own. He nodded. Inwardly, he felt that the choice was obvious, but the world around him was still pressing. Betting, reputation, it all rattled, but Maya taught him another game, the game of honesty. In the evening, they were sitting on the balcony. The city was ablaze with lights, but for the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about victories and defeats. He watched her as she laughed softly at a joke she had come up with. "You've changed," she said. "Not externally, but internally." "You too," he replied. "And I like it." He could feel his familiar armor crumbling. There was no longer a need to keep your distance, play a game, or control the opinions of others. It was just him, her, and the quiet, complicated magic of living together. On Friday evening, Ethan was invited to a private gala evening of the business elite. Maya, even though she agreed to accompany him, felt the weight of everyone's gaze like a heavy cloak. It was cold in the hall, and the light from the chandeliers was reflected in the glitter of dresses and suits, creating an atmosphere of artificial perfection. "Are you ready?" "What is it?" she asked softly, straightening his tie. "No," Ethan admitted, even though it would have been ridiculous in public. "But I'll be there." Maya nodded. She felt that she was being looked at not as a person, but as an experimental subject, and this irritated and scared her, but at the same time forced her to hold her head high. The evening started with smiles and greetings, but soon the pressure became palpable. "I heard about your bet, Ethan," one of the partners said, leaning in slightly. "It's a funny story, isn't it?" Ethan replied dryly. "I don't think this is a story for discussion." "And Maya?" The other chuckled. "Did you really marry her seriously? Or is this just a trick for us?" Maya felt irritation rising inside her. Her face remained calm, but a vein of steel flashed in her eyes. She could have kept quiet and let Ethan protect her, but she decided to act. "I didn't marry him for show," she said flatly. "And if you think this is a trick, the problem is not with us." There was silence for a moment. Several of the guests whispered, and Ethan felt a strange mixture of pride and anxiety. He realized that Maya wasn't just withstanding the pressure. She was meeting him with an honesty and strength he hadn't seen before. After the gala evening, they drove in the car in silence. There was tension inside, which was not because of the words, but because of the accumulated emotions. "Aren't you mad at me for still playing the role of a successful man in the eyes of others?" Ethan asked quietly. "I wasn't angry," Maya replied, looking out at the night city through the window. "But sometimes I'm afraid that I'll become just a decoration." "You'll never be a stage set," he said, feeling the words come out of his heart for the first time without a mask. "You've changed me." She turned to him. "I want to believe that. But sometimes honesty is scarier than gambling." Ethan nodded. He realized that her words were not an accusation, but a challenge to accept himself, his feelings, and his mistakes. They stayed at home the next day. Maya made breakfast, and Ethan helped set the table. Each gesture was quiet, almost imperceptible. The mugs placed, the napkins neatly folded, the light music in the background. "It was hard yesterday," Ethan admitted, "but I realized something important." "What is it?" Maya asked. "That everything that I used to consider success, money, status, control, is worthless without a person with whom you can be real." Maya smiled, and this time it wasn't a cautious smile. "And I realized that trust is a risk. But sometimes the only way to find out what's important is to take a chance." And at that moment, they both felt that the paper wife had turned into a real woman next to a real man. It's been a few months since Ethan and Maya officially became husband and wife. It would seem that outwardly everything was going perfectly. A luxurious penthouse, invitations to parties, perfect dinners, smiles for the cameras. But behind the facade of calmness, the first cracks began, not in the marriage, but inside each of them. Ethan noticed this in the morning, when Maya was sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded and staring at a cup of tea, as if trying to find answers inside its warm steam. "Do you think I'm not coping?" "What is it?" she asked softly, almost to herself. Ethan paused. He's used to seeing the world as a game with rules and strategy. But here, with her, there are no formulas, no checklists. There is only one person nearby, with their fears, doubts, and the past. "No," he said at last. "I think we're learning, just together." Maya looked at him and smiled a little, but the smile did not reach his eyes. She knew that words were one thing, but the fear of being misunderstood was another. On the same day, Ethan invited Maya to a meeting with potential investors. In public, he was himself, confident, charismatic, a billionaire. But behind closed doors, when the guests and partners discussed their union, he felt a growing discomfort inside him. "Did you really marry her?" One of the colleagues asked again, slightly twisting his mouth. Is this for a game or is it serious? Ethan was silent. Maya, who was sitting next to him, noticed how his shoulders tensed. She understood that he was still struggling with his own image. I would say it's a choice, Maya said softly but firmly. And everyone has the right to their own decisions. Ethan was surprised by her calmness. He usually defended himself alone, but now she was there, and it was strange and pleasant at the same time. They returned home in the evening. Maya made tea, and Ethan sat down across from her. You know, he began, sometimes I think society will never accept us. And it's hard. It's hard for me to always be in the public eye, she replied. People are watching, evaluating, judging. But we can choose how to react. You're teaching me, he said softly. You teach me to be myself. She looked at him, and there was something warm, almost sincere, in her eyes. I just want you to be honest with yourself. The following days were filled with small scenes of intimacy and rapprochement. Cooking dinner together, walking in the park, reading books next to each other. But along with that, there were doubts that no one could ignore. Maya was afraid that Ethan still saw their union as a game or an experiment. Ethan was afraid to admit to himself that his affection for Maya had surpassed any desire for control. They both learned to trust, slowly, cautiously, but not hopelessly. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the night city, Maya said, Sometimes I feel like we're on stage. But there is truth behind every word. It's true, Ethan agreed quietly. It is more complicated than any rules. They were silent, but the silence was no longer empty. It became a space for trust, for reflection, in order to understand that a marriage that began as a bet was gradually turning into a real life. After several weeks of relative harmony, the day came when the social pressure became almost palpable physically. Ethan invited Maya to meet with friends from his old circle, people with whom he had spent years discussing deals, cars, and yachts. Well, who is this unusual wife? One of the old friends asked, sitting down with a glass of champagne. Ethan felt something constrict in his chest. He always protected his image, but now it wasn't just an image. Now it's Maya. This is my wife, he said calmly, but without his usual lightness. And she's an amazing person. Are you serious? What is it? The other asked, grinning. A millionaire marries for the sake of a bet, and now he's trying to convince us that it's love? Maya, who was sitting next to him, noticed the tension. She understood that for many she was just an experiment, a decoration. But instead of closing her eyes, she looked directly at the man who was grinning. I can be anything for you, but for him I am real. And this is important. Some of the guests whispered, some shook their heads. But for the first time, Ethan didn't feel the need to justify himself. He looked at Maya and saw in her a power he hardly possessed himself, the power to be himself, despite the condemnation. After returning home, they sat down on the sofa in silence. Maya, a little tired, rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. Aren't you scared? What is it? She asked softly. It's scary, he confessed, stroking her hand. But the fear is different than before. I used to be afraid of losing control. Now I'm afraid of losing you. And if society condemns you anyway? What is it? She asked. Let them judge, he said. Their opinion no longer defines me. These words became a turning point. They were no longer participants in the game for the audience. They learned to be themselves by opening up to each other. The next day, they spent the whole day together at home. Maya was cooking dinner, and Ethan was cleaning the kitchen, doing it with unusual patience for himself. They laughed at minor mistakes. Burnt potatoes, mixed spices. Are you laughing at yourself? Maya asked, watching him try to salt the potatoes and spill some oil. No, he smiled. I just see that being real is funny sometimes. Their laughter filled the apartment with warmth that hadn't been there before. Simple everyday scenes, having breakfast together, evening walks, talking about books, became a bridge between them. But internal conflict still existed. Maya was afraid that Ethan still viewed their union as an experiment, and he doubted he could afford to be vulnerable completely. Sometimes I feel like you're keeping your distance, she said one evening, sitting on the balcony. Maybe, he replied, but I'm learning to let go of control, and you're showing me how to do it. I just want you to be honest with yourself, she said, softly but firmly. I'm honest, he said, but honesty is scary. And at that moment, they realized that the test, which began as a bet, turns into a real emotional adventure. where every step requires trust and courage. That evening, Ethan invited Maya to a charity event at the historic mansion. The event was one of those where money, status, and the views of others determined a person's success. The guests whispered about the millionaire's marriage, and the cameras gently slid over their faces, capturing every emotion. "Ready?" Ethan asked quietly, straightening his tie. "I'm ready," Maya replied, putting on a simple but elegant dress. She looked confident, although she felt the usual tension inside. They entered the hall, and the gazes fell on them almost instantly. People discussed, "She's too ordinary. He's married for a bet. How long will this marriage last?" Ethan noticed Maya stiffen slightly. He took her hand. "Don't be afraid," he said softly. "We're here together, and it doesn't concern anyone else." Maya nodded. For the first time, she felt that Ethan was really on her side, not for the sake of image, not for the sake of betting, but for her own sake. When the host introduced them as spouses, several guests whispered, expecting Maya to embarrass herself. But she smiled calmly, looked into Ethan's eyes, and spoke softly so that only he could hear. "We're together." For the first time, Ethan felt like he didn't need to play a role. He lowered himself to her, almost in a whisper. "We're together. And it's true." And suddenly, the space around them seemed to dissolve. Noise, whispers, glances, everything became secondary. There was only one moment. They were standing next to each other, holding hands, and the world no longer mattered. After the evening, when they returned home, Maya made tea, and Ethan sat across from her. "You were incredible today," he said. "And I realized that the real power is to be yourself, no matter what. And I realized that true love is a risk," Maya smiled. "But it's worth the risk to be honest with each other." And in that moment, Ethan realized the reputation, all that was behind him. Now he had a life in front of him that he had chosen consciously, and a person with whom he wanted to go through it. It's been 6 months since their official marriage. From the outside, it seemed that Ethan and Maya's life was perfect. A luxurious penthouse, parties, smiling cameras, compliments from colleagues. But inside, every step was accompanied by internal battles. Ethan noticed this in the morning when Maya was making coffee in the kitchen. "You have an important meeting today," she said, watching his usual ritual of checking his smartphone. "You're nervous." "Always a little," he admitted. "But now it's not just a business meeting. This is a test of my new life." Maya smiled softly, but with a hint of anxiety. "I know that people will discuss us. They're always discussing." Ethan nodded. He felt that external pressure had become an inevitable part of their union. That day, they went to a business meeting with potential partners. As soon as they entered the room, Ethan noticed the looks of doubt and skepticism. People whispered, "She doesn't match his status. He's married for a bet. How long will this marriage last?" Ethan squeezed Maya's hand under the table. He understood that now his choice was not only in front of society, but also in front of himself. "We're here to talk about the project," he said, looking at the partners. "Not about my personal life." Maya, who was sitting next to him, quietly added, "And we are ready to be honest." Some of the guests looked confused, some shook their heads, but for the first time Ethan felt inner peace. He was no longer trying to live up to other people's expectations. After returning home, they had an evening at home. They cooked dinner together, laughed at minor mistakes, talked about books and movies. These quiet moments became real life for them, where there was no need to play roles. "Sometimes I'm scared," Maya confessed, "that you still see me as an experiment." "I'm scared too," Ethan said softly. "But now my fear is not control, but vulnerability." She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. "We're learning to be real," she said. And at that moment, they realized that the true challenge was not in society, not in criticism, but in their ability to trust and be honest with each other. That evening, Ethan and Maya had dinner at home. There were simple dishes on the table: salad, homemade pasta, and fresh bread. It seemed like an ordinary, everyday scene, but tension was in the air. "Did you notice how your friends were discussing us today?" Maya asked, carefully arranging the plates. "Yes," Ethan admitted, looking up from his phone. "And I know it might annoy you." "Annoy you? What is it?" she asked, looking straight into his eyes. "It scares me that people think of me as some kind of experiment." Ethan lowered his gaze. He couldn't immediately give her an answer that would calm her down. "Maya," he began softly, "I understand that this is hard, but you should know that for me this is more than a game. But sometimes you still act like it's an experiment, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I feel like you're evaluating me, not accepting me. His heart sank. He had never faced such a direct accusation before, which was both true and demanding of trust. He began, but couldn't find the words. Tell the truth, Ethan, Maya said softly but urgently. Not for me, but for yourself. He took a deep breath. It was more difficult than any business decision. I'm afraid of being vulnerable, he finally admitted. I'm used to controlling everything, even my feelings. And with you, it's impossible. Maya was silent for a moment, then said softly, and I'm afraid that you will go to the old world, where everything is subordinated to the plan and status. Ethan reached out and took her hand. I'm not leaving. I want to be here, with you, even if it's scary. She looked at him and for the first time saw real vulnerability in his eyes. The eyes of a man who had been in charge of the situation all his life and now trusted someone completely. Then we can start over, she said, smiling slightly. No expectations, no roles. And at that moment, they both realized that their first real quarrel was the beginning of a new stage, a stage where honesty, trust, and emotional intimacy are more important than all external rules and expectations. After the quarrel, Ethan and Maya began to gradually rebuild their relationship, not through loud confessions, but through small, almost imperceptible habits that gradually built a bridge of trust. Every morning, Ethan no longer woke up alone for work and phone calls. He got up a little later, made coffee, and brought it to Maya in bed. She greeted him with a smile that had now become familiar and real. You've learned to be patient, she said one day, accepting a cup from his hands. I'm learning, he replied with a slight grin. With you. These little gestures seemed trivial, but it was a real discovery for them, learning to take care of and notice each other, not considering it a duty. During the day, they walked around the city together, discussing books, movies, and funny childhood stories. At a cafe where they had rarely stopped before, Maya laughed at how Ethan tried to order a not-too-complicated latte, and he, in turn, was surprised at how pleasant it was just to watch her reactions. I've never noticed such things before, he confessed. It was all about the result. Now I understand that the process is important. You see, Maya smiled. Sometimes the world outside the rules is much more interesting. These walks have become a ritual, an opportunity to be ordinary without playing the role of a millionaire and an unusual wife. However, the external pressure still wouldn't let go. Friends and relatives continued to discuss their union, sometimes openly, sometimes in whispers. But Ethan was reacting differently now. We're together, that's a fact, he told his partners and friends. And you can discuss it as much as you want, but it won't change our lives. Maya, watching him, felt real confidence in him for the first time. He was no longer just a charismatic man for society. He was becoming a man capable of protecting their union and respecting her individuality. One evening they set up a home theater. Blankets, soft light rain outside the window. Ethan was holding Maya's hand, and not a single glance from the outside mattered. You know, she said softly, I'm no longer afraid that you'll go back to the old world. And I'm not afraid of being vulnerable anymore, he replied, looking into her eyes. And for the first time, they felt that their union had become not just a game or a bet, but a real life. A life where honesty, trust, and love become the foundation. It's been a few weeks. Little things that had previously seemed insignificant to Ethan began to appear in Ethan's habits, but now they were becoming symbols of change. One morning, he himself noticed that Maya was tired after a late project. Instead of the usual business morning, he made breakfast, neatly arranged the plates, and put her favorite tea on the table. You did it without being reminded, Maya said, barely able to contain her smile. I want to notice, he replied, bending down to kiss her cheek. To notice you, not because I have to, but because I want to. Maya felt a slight warmth in her chest. She saw that this was sincere, the first step to trusting him completely. They were planning a short vacation out of town next week. Ethan was used to luxury hotels and organized events, but this time he agreed to a cozy lake house, which Maya chose. Why here? What is it? He asked as they unpacked. No one will be watching, evaluating, or discussing us here, she replied. It's just us. Ethan felt an unusual sense of relief. He realized that the freedom to be himself next to her was more valuable than any luxurious places and public recognition. During a walk by the lake, a small but important moment occurred. Maya stumbled, and Ethan immediately grabbed her arm. "Be careful," he said. "I'm fine," she smiled. But for him, it was a sign. Caring was no longer formal or symbolic. He was really worried about her, completely surrendering to his feelings, without regard for external rules and expectations. The next day, they cooked dinner together, and for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to joke about his clumsy attempts at chopping vegetables. Maya was laughing, and he realized that laughter had become their link, an indicator of trust and comfort. "I've never been able to laugh at myself before," he confessed softly. "And now, I like it." "Because you're next to me," Maya said, lightly touching his arm. "And we're learning to be real." In the evening, they sat on the terrace, watching the sunset. Ethan thought about it. Life used to be linear, predictable, manageable. Now, every day with Maya brought new things: emotions, care, and trust. He realized that the real power is not in control, but in the ability to open up to another person. Maya, watching him, felt that her fears were gradually disappearing. She saw in him not only a man with $1 billion fortune, but a man capable of being vulnerable, caring, and honest. "Thanks for staying," she said softly. "Thank you for giving me a chance to be real," he replied. And at that moment, they both realized that an alliance that began as a bet was turning into a real feeling that would change their lives forever. It's been almost a year since their marriage. Ethan and Maya have learned to live together, finding joy in small habits and moments together. But the outside world wasn't going to let them go. One gray autumn day, Ethan received an invitation to a major investment forum. The letter emphasized the need to be present with his wife, an excuse for social photos, and a demonstration of the ideal millionaire's family. "Do you really want to go?" Maya asked when he showed her the letter. "I have to," Ethan replied. "But I want to go with you, not as a decoration, but as a partner." Maya sighed slightly. It seemed to her that the audience would be waiting for the show effect, rather than a real woman next to a man. But she decided to accept the challenge. On the forum, they encountered the usual whispers and appreciative glances. People discussed everything from Maya's appearance to how Ethan plays the role. "I see that you are still married for the sake of a bet," one of the influential guests said with a malicious smile. Ethan squeezed Maya's hand under the table, and she met his gaze with quiet determination. "We're here together," she said, "and that's a fact that doesn't require approval." For the first time, Ethan didn't feel the need to justify himself. He realized that public opinion does not control his life. After the forum, they decided to walk along the embankment to discuss the events of the day. The wind played with Maya's hair, and the city lights were reflected in the water. "It was hard today," she said, trembling slightly. "Sometimes I'm afraid you still see us as an experiment." "No," he said firmly. "I see that this is more than a bet. This is the life I choose. And I choose you." Maya smiled, feeling confident in his words. But there was still a tinge of fear in her eyes. Trust takes time. The next day, they had an evening together at home. Maya made dinner, and Ethan helped set the table. Every movement was a sign of habit and care, serving dishes, light jokes, cleaning together. "You know," Maya said, "I'm starting to believe that we can really be happy, despite everything that others think." "Me too," Ethan replied. "And I realized that the real power is not money and power, but the ability to be honest and open with the person you love." That day was a turning point. They realized that the outside world can create pressure, but inner connection and trust are stronger than any opinions. The union that started as a bet slowly turned into a real feeling, tested by time and trials. In the evening after the forum, Ethan and Maya sat on the terrace, watching the lights of the city reflected in the river. The silence was filled with thoughts and unexpressed words. "Ethan," Maya began, "I've been offered a job in another city. It's a big opportunity, but it's far away." He looked at her, and his heart sank. The opportunity was important, but for her, it was no less. "It means we have to decide how we're going to live," he said softly. "Together or separately. We can try to be together, but it will change everything," she confessed. Ethan understood. This is the first real challenge of their union, which begins as a bet and gradually turns into trust. He had never before faced a situation where he had to choose between a career, public expectations, and a personal life. The next day, they discussed everything in detail. Ethan offered a compromise. Maya could accept the job, and he would travel to her more often, keep in touch, and adjust his work schedule to spend more time together. "Are you ready for this?" "What is it?" she asked cautiously. "Yes," he replied. "I choose us. Not a bet, not a status, but you and me." Maya felt the tension in her chest ease a little. She saw in him not only a man with millions and influence, but a man capable of making sacrifices for the sake of a relationship. But this decision has brought its own difficulties. On working days, they communicated through calls and video calls, discussed small things, supported each other, and sometimes argued. "I miss you," Maya said one evening, trying not to sound accusatory. "Me too," Ethan admitted. "But I understand that if we can handle this, we will be stronger." And there was more than a promise in those words. It felt like they were both growing up, learning to be patient, trusting, and caring for each other. A few weeks later, Ethan decided to show Maya that he trusted her completely by giving her the opportunity to lead one of his charity projects. It was a huge step. He gave her power, responsibility, and recognition, recognizing her worth not only as a wife, but also as a person. "It's important to me that you know. I believe in you," he said, handing her the keys to the office and control of the project. "I don't know what to say," she replied, her eyes shining. "This is a huge responsibility. I believe you can handle it," he said. And that's part of what it means to trust each other. Maya felt for the first time that she was really on an equal footing with him. The union, which started as a bet, turned into a partnership based on respect, trust, and care. It's been a few months since Maya took control of Ethan's charity project. The first results were modest, but for her they were huge. She felt that her voice was heard and her decisions were appreciated. "Look," she said, showing the report on her tablet. "We've attracted new sponsors and launched a program for children." Ethan looked at the numbers and then at her. My heart sank with pride and something new, real joy for her success. "You did it yourself," he said softly. "I only gave you a chance." "You gave me your trust," she corrected. "And trust is always stronger than money and status." And at that moment, they both felt that the union, which began as a bet, was turning into a real life. A life where respect and support were more important than outward splendor. However, the joy was not eternal. New challenges soon appeared. Ethan's society and old friends continued to whisper about this strange millionaire marriage, and colleagues hinted at the unexpected risks of the business associated with Maya's new leadership. "Do you understand that this could be dangerous for your reputation?" one of Ethan's partners asked. "Yes," he replied calmly. "But it's worth the risk to trust someone I trust." Maya, observing his firmness, felt for the first time in a long time that her alliance with Ethan was becoming a solid foundation where external opinions mattered only when they were compatible with their values. At home, they spent the evening on the terrace, enjoying the quiet evening and the light rain. "You know," Maya said, "today I felt like I could be myself completely." "Me too," Ethan replied. "And this feeling is priceless." They held hands, listening to the rain, realizing that small victories and joint decisions are the foundation on which their trust is built. New challenges continued to appear: travel offers, invitations to events, gossip from colleagues and acquaintances. But each time, Ethan and Maya coped together, discussing everything, making decisions together, and strengthening their relationship. "We became a team," Maya said one day, "and this is stronger than any trials." "Yes," Ethan agreed. "And I'm willing to take any risks if they're with you." And so, through small victories and joint decisions, their union gradually turned from a bet into a real feeling that could withstand any external pressures and internal doubts. It's been about a year and a half since their marriage. Ethan and Maya's union was strong, but Ethan's past began to remind them of itself, quietly but persistently. One day, a former business partner came to his office with an unexpected proposal: a joint investment in a major project. Everything seemed tempting, except for one thing. Maya's participation in project management could cause controversy among investors and even undermine her reputation. "It's just business," the partner said, grinning. "But for some people, your strange marriage can be a problem." Ethan felt a mixture of annoyance and fear bubbling up inside him. The fear of losing the respect of his colleagues, the fear that his past will interfere with the life he is building with Maya. In the evening, he returned home and sat on the couch, considering the proposal. Maya noticed his tension. "What happened? What is it?" she asked softly, sitting down next to him. "My former partner is offering an investment," he replied. "But for some people, it may raise questions about you." "Questions about me?" Maya asked, slightly tensing up. "Yes, some investors may think that your role here is problematic," he admitted. Maya took a deep breath and looked at him. "Ethan, I'm not with you for investors. And if it's important to you, we'll do it together." For the first time, Ethan felt how strong her support was. He understood that the trust they had built would be able to withstand any shadows of his past. The next day, they discussed strategy together, how to accept an offer without undermining either her reputation or their union. Maya actively participated, offered ideas and approaches. Ethan felt proud and relieved. He was no longer alone, and the decision was being made together. "You're showing that trust can be stronger than any pressure," he said softly. "And you're showing that you're ready to change for the sake of a relationship," she replied with a slight smile. The project was successful. Investors saw Maya not as a strange millionaire's wife, but as a competent and strong partner. Ethan realized that their union no longer depended on the opinions of others. His strength now lay in trust, partnership, and respect for Maya as a person. "We did it," he said in the evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset. "Yes," Maya smiled. "And this is just the beginning." And at that moment, they both felt that the union, which began as a bet, had finally turned into a real feeling, strong, conscious, and time-tested, which gave them the strength to withstand any external and internal challenges. Despite the success in living together and working on the project, Maya still felt the old complexes that had once shaped her perception of herself. Sometimes they appeared suddenly, like dark shadows of the past, reminding of the fear of being imperfect or unworthy. One evening, when they were cooking dinner together, Maya stopped in front of the mirror in the hallway, straightening her hair. "You're looking at yourself with doubt for some reason," Ethan said, noticing her movement. Sometimes I'm afraid that you'll see in me what others have seen," she confessed softly. "That I'm not good enough, not beautiful enough, not enough, a lot." Ethan walked over to her and took her hands. "Maya, I haven't seen you as insufficient for a long time. I see a man with whom I want to build a life. You're real, real." She looked at him and felt warmth, but the doubts didn't disappear instantly. Old fears go away slowly. They need to be lived and realized. The next day, Maya decided to share her feelings more deeply. They were sitting on the balcony with cups of hot tea, watching the autumn city. "Sometimes I'm afraid that society is still evaluating me," she said, "and it makes me doubt myself." "I know," Ethan replied, "but I want you to know that it's important to me who you really are. Not your appearance, not the opinion of others, but yourself. And if I still have doubts?" "What is it?" she asked. "Then we'll go through this together," he said. Not as a game, not as a bet, but as life. And for the first time, Maya felt that her inner fears could not be hidden, but discussed, that this did not make her weak, but on the contrary, made their union stronger. In the evening, they looked at Maya's old photos together. She laughed at her teenage attempts to follow the ideals of beauty, and he smiled quietly next to her, enjoying her sincerity. "I used to be afraid of such moments," she confessed. "Now, I like it. Because now we can be ourselves," Ethan said. "And that makes us real." These simple but significant moments became a new foundation for Maya. Her complexes stopped controlling the relationship, and Ethan's inner trust and recognition helped them transform. A few more months passed. The union of Ethan and Maya gradually ceased to be just a bet marriage or cohabitation. Now it was a life filled with small but meaningful expressions of care and affection. Maya woke up earlier than Ethan one morning and noticed that he had already made coffee and toast in the kitchen. There was a small note on the table. "For you to start the day with a smile." She smiled, touched by the simplicity and attention. It was not an ostentatious act for the society, but a sincere gesture. "You know how to surprise," she said softly when he entered the kitchen. "I'm learning from you," he replied, smiling. "I'm learning to be attentive, not just successful." Maya felt for the first time that love is not only romantic words, but also daily little things that show care and respect. That same day, Ethan suggested that they spend an evening together in nature, away from the bustling city and the stares of others. "It's just us and the world around us," he said as they walked along a path through the trees. "I like it," Maya smiled. "So simple, and yet so real." They talked about books, laughed at random observations, and shared thoughts they had previously kept to themselves. These minutes became a symbol of their new closeness. Trust grew with every glance, touch, and joke. Later, when they were having a picnic by the lake, Ethan suddenly lifted her hands and looked straight into her eyes. "You know, Maya, I never thought that a game or a bet could lead to something real. But with you, everything has become real." He paused. "You've changed me." Maya felt tears in her eyes, but the smile was sincere. "And you love me," she said. "We're learning to be real together." It was the moment when the fears of the past, complexes, and doubts dissolved. Their union was no longer dependent on external pressure or public opinion. It was built on trust, respect, and mutual love, which manifested themselves in everyday actions and small gestures. They returned home in the evening, tired but happy. Maya was cooking dinner, and Ethan was helping set the table. Their laughter, light jokes, and gentle conversation created an atmosphere where no one and nothing could destroy their trust. "You know," Maya said, "I'm starting to believe that true love is the ability to be yourself and be there for you, no matter what." "Me too," Ethan replied. "And I want us to always keep this feeling." And at that moment, they both felt that the union, which began as a bet, had finally turned into a real feeling, tested by time, trials, and inner fears. And now it has become their life. It's been 2 years since their marriage. Ethan and Maya's union was strong, but external circumstances began to test their strength. One day, Ethan received a letter from a law firm. The former company was trying to challenge some of his assets and projects, claiming that the new marriage and changes in company management violated old contracts. "This is serious," Ethan said to Maya, showing the documents. "There may be consequences for the entire business, including your project. So we'll have to act together," Maya replied, holding back her anxiety. "I'm with you." For the first time, Ethan felt that he was not alone. Maya was not just a wife, but a partner who could make important decisions and stand by in a crisis. The following week, they held long meetings with lawyers and investors. The pressure was incredible: gossip in the press, whispers from colleagues, doubts from partners. "Are you sure that this marriage will not undermine your project?" one of the investors asked. Ethan squeezed Maya's hand under the table. Irritation and determination mixed inside him. "We're sure," he said firmly, "and we can do it together." Maya felt an inner warmth. He chooses her every time, despite the pressure and fears. In the evening, they took a short walk along the embankment at home, trying to relieve the tension. "Sometimes I'm afraid we won't make it," Maya confessed quietly. "That the past will interfere in our lives again." "I'm scared too," Ethan said. "But now I know that we are stronger than these fears. And if we are together, no external difficulties will destroy us." These words became the foundation for their new decisions. Every step was now taken together, with trust and respect for each other. Several weeks have passed. Maya offered Ethan a strategy that could not only protect their projects, but also improve the company's position. He was hesitant at first, but then he realized that her ideas were strong. And their joint decision was a confirmation of a new level of trust and partnership. "You've changed," he said softly as they discussed the details. "And I'm changing with you. And it makes us stronger," she replied with a restrained smile. And at that moment, they realized that external crises can be severe, but their union is built on trust, support, and mutual maturity, which makes their relationship resilient to any challenges. After the external business crisis, Ethan and Maya felt relieved, but the tension remained. They are both tired of the constant struggle with society, business conflicts, and internal doubts. One evening, Maya returned home later than usual after meeting with her project partners. She was tired, with slightly rumpled clothes, but beaming with inner satisfaction. "It went well," she said when Ethan opened the door. "But I'm tired and a little disappointed with how people perceive us." Ethan noticed a hint of weariness and irritation in her eyes. He came over and hugged her, tightly but tenderly. I know, he said softly. And I want you to know that all that matters to me is you and what we're building together. Maya sighed, letting her emotions get out. This moment opened the door to a new intimacy. Tension was replaced by warmth, trust by passion. Later, when they were sitting next to each other on the couch, Maya leaned on Ethan's shoulder. He hugged her, and for the first time their contact was not only friendly or caring, but also emotionally and physically intimate. I've never allowed myself to relax so much around someone before, she confessed softly. But with you, this is different. Me too, Ethan replied. I feel like I might be vulnerable. And that's what makes everything real. Their hands intertwined, their eyes met, and a sincere emotional passion arose between them. One that is born only after trust, respect, and overcoming challenges together. The next day, they discussed future plans together, but now the conversation wasn't just about work and the outside world. There were dreams, hopes, small promises to each other. I want us to keep opening up to each other, Maya said, to make this feeling grow despite all the difficulties. Me too, Ethan said, and I'm willing to go through anything if we're together. And at that moment, they both felt that their union, which began as a bet and a game, had finally turned into a real emotional and physical intimacy that laid the foundation for a deep, mature relationship. After the external business crisis, Ethan and Maya felt relieved, but the tension remained. They are both tired of the constant struggle with society, business conflicts, and internal doubts. One evening, Maya returned home later than usual after meeting with her project partners. She was tired, with slightly rumpled clothes, but beaming with inner satisfaction. It went well, she said when Ethan opened the door. But I'm tired and a little disappointed with how people perceive us. Ethan noticed a hint of weariness and irritation in her eyes. He came over and hugged her, tightly but tenderly. I know, he said softly, and I want you to know that all that matters to me is you and what we're building together. Maya sighed, letting her emotions get out. This moment opened the door to a new intimacy. Tension was replaced by warmth, trust by passion. Later, when they were sitting next to each other on the couch, Maya leaned on Ethan's shoulder. He hugged her, and for the first time their contact was not only friendly or caring, but also emotionally and physically intimate. I've never allowed myself to relax so much around someone before, she confessed softly. But with you, this is different. Me too, Ethan replied. I feel like I might be vulnerable. And that's what makes everything real. Their hands intertwined, their eyes met, and a sincere emotional passion arose between them. One that is born only after trust, respect, and overcoming challenges together. The next day, they discussed future plans together, but now the conversation wasn't just about work and the outside world. There were dreams, hopes, small promises to each other. I want us to keep opening up to each other, Maya said, to make this feeling grow despite all the difficulties. Me too, Ethan said, and I'm willing to go through anything if we're together. And at that moment, they both felt that their union, which began as a bet and a game, had finally turned into a real emotional and physical intimacy that laid the foundation for a deep, mature relationship. After the incident at the social party, Ethan and Maya decided to act together, showing that their union is based on respect, trust, and equality. Ethan invited Maya to publicly present the results of her charity project at a business conference. It was a risk. The attention of society, colleagues, and the press could increase the condemnation, but they both understood that this was a chance to strengthen their reputation and show the strength of the union. Are you ready? Ethan asked as they rehearsed her speech. Yes, Maya replied, and I know you'll be there for me. Maya performed confidently on stage, answering questions from the audience and demonstrating competence. Ethan watched from the front row, filled with pride. He realized that her strength was not only her personal qualities, but also their joint support and trust, which made her brave. Later, they returned home and discussed the results. You did great, Ethan said, smiling. And I realized that together we can go through any difficulties. We've proven to ourselves that we can trust each other, Maya said, lightly touching his arm. And this is more important than any opinions. Their joint actions have strengthened not only the relationship, but also the inner confidence of each. Maya felt that her opinions and decisions were valuable, and Ethan became convinced that partnership was stronger than any control or pressure. In the evening, as they sat on the terrace watching the city, Maya said, "You know, I used to be afraid that we were just betting, that everything would disappear like a joke. And now?" Ethan asked. "Now I know it's real," she replied. "And this is the strongest thing." Ethan nodded and hugged her tightly. They realized that an alliance that began as a bet is turning into a partnership that has been tested by time, trials, and their joint actions. Despite the joint victories, life continued to throw up difficulties. Maya received an offer for an important conference abroad, a chance she had dreamed of, but at the same time it meant a temporary separation from Ethan. "I'm afraid that if I leave, we'll become estranged," she confessed in the evening, sitting next to him on the couch. "We've been through more than that," Ethan said, "and I know it won't destroy us. But I want to be honest, I'm going to miss you." Maya felt a mixture of anxiety and gratitude. She understood that love is not only about moments together, but also the ability to trust when circumstances separate. The next day, Ethan faced an unexpected business test. Investors began to doubt Maya's new solutions, fearing her inexperience. "It's all a rumor," Ethan told Maya over a video call. "But I want you to know that I fully support you." "Thank you," she replied, feeling a surge of confidence. "Your faith in me gives you strength." This day became a test for their emotional maturity. Maya realized that her competence was recognized not only by Ethan, but also through actions, and Ethan became convinced that trust in a partner is stronger than any doubts and external attacks. In the evening, after a busy day, they had a video dinner together, laughing and discussing small things. These moments have become a symbol of their ability to maintain connection and emotional intimacy, even when they are physically separated by kilometers. "I'm starting to understand," Maya said, "that true intimacy doesn't depend on distance, but on trust and mutual care." "Me too," Ethan agreed. "And this makes us stronger than any external circumstances." This experience taught them an important lesson. True love manifests itself through trust, the ability to let go, support a partner, and maintain an emotional connection even in the face of challenges. A union that began as a bet becomes mature, deep, and ready to withstand any challenges. Autumn came, and with it all the conflicts escalated. Ethan's former partners increased the pressure on the business. Public opinion was critical, and rumors of a strange millionaire marriage once again spread online and in the media. "This is already going beyond business matters," Ethan said, scanning the latest posts and articles. "People are trying to separate us through gossip and rumors." "It's scary again," Maya admitted. "Sometimes it seems to me that we are still playing someone else's game." Ethan came over and took her hands. "We are playing only one game now in our lives, and no one has the right to interfere." Maya felt her inner anxiety recede slightly. But the test was not completed yet. On the same day, a dispute with investors broke out in the office. Some doubted Maya's competence, jeopardizing an important project. "Do you understand that she is leading the project successfully?" Ethan stood up, looking resolutely at everyone. "She's trustworthy, and so am I." "But," one of the investors began, but Ethan cut him off. "If you doubt her, doubt me. We work as a team, and any doubts you have should be shared, not directed at one person." Maya stood next to him, watching him, and for the first time felt that his support was not just words. These are actions that are ready to protect it from any external threats. In the evening, when they returned home, tired but victorious, they had a quiet dinner on the terrace. The city lights reflected in the river, creating a sense of comfort and tranquility. "Today we prove to ourselves and the world that we are stronger together," Maya said, "even when the whole world is against us." "Yes," Ethan replied. "And now I know for sure that everything that started as a bet has turned into a real life full of trust, love, and mutual support." And at that moment, they realized that the union, which began as a joke, has become strong, mature, and ready to withstand any external and internal storms. After a tense period of external crises, Ethan and Maya felt a long-awaited relief. Defeating pressure from colleagues, investors, and gossip gave them a sense of inner strength and confidence. One evening, they took a walk through the park, where leaves were slowly falling from the trees, turning the paths golden red. "You know," Maya said, "I've rarely allowed myself to feel so calm. Usually, fear or doubt got in the way." "We can afford that feeling now," Ethan replied. and it only strengthens us. Maya smiled, feeling like their union was finally reaching a new level. The emotional harmony they had built through trust, support, and teamwork. That evening, they sat on a bench by the lake, holding hands, and discussed not business and projects, but dreams, books, and memories. I never thought that a game that started as a bet could lead to such a real feeling, Maya said, looking at the reflection of the lights in the water. I never thought I'd be able to trust so completely and openly, Ethan replied. But now I understand that the real strength lies in honesty and vulnerability. They were silent, enjoying the moment, allowing the world around them to be just a backdrop to their inner peace and emotional intimacy. The next day, returning home, they decided to arrange a small ritual together. Every morning they prepare breakfast for each other and discuss plans without haste and pressure. These simple actions became a symbol of their harmony. Trust, love, and respect manifested themselves not only in words, but also in everyday gestures. I feel like we've finally found our rhythm, Maya said, setting the table. Yes, Ethan agreed. And that makes everything we've been through worthwhile. And at that moment, they realized that defeating external crises had not only strengthened their union, but also allowed everyone to feel true emotional harmony, a rare and precious result of teamwork, trust, and love. After a period of external victories, Ethan and Maya faced a new challenge: internal doubts and fears that manifested themselves quietly but persistently. One night, Maya woke up feeling anxious. She quietly approached Ethan, who was already asleep, and sat down next to him. Ethan, she whispered, sometimes I feel like I'm still not good enough, that I don't deserve you. Ethan woke up, looked at her, and gently hugged her. Maya, I know how you feel, but what matters to me is not what others think, not the standards or the past. What matters to me is who you are, and you deserve everything that's between us. She leaned against him, letting the tears come out. At that moment, they weren't talking about work, public opinion, or external challenges. It was pure, intimate contact, trust, vulnerability, and love. The next day, they walked through the park together, discussing past fears and worries. I used to always keep everything inside, Maya said, afraid to show weakness. And now? Ethan asked. Now I can share, she replied. And this feeling of freedom is priceless. Ethan smiled, feeling their bond deepen. They realized that true intimacy arises not only through physical contact, but also through emotional honesty and trust, through the ability to accept each other's vulnerability. In the evening, they had dinner together at home, laughing quietly and discussing plans. Ethan suggested that they write little notes about their feelings to each other, to share emotions and words that are sometimes difficult to say out loud. It's a little childish, Maya said, but it works. Yes, Ethan agreed. Sometimes small gestures are stronger than any words. And at that moment, they realized that the union, which began as a bet, has turned into a space where everyone can be themselves, show vulnerability, trust, and love without fear. In the spring of the following year, Ethan and Maya's life made unexpected changes again. One of the competitors tried to bribe the employees of Ethan's company in order to destabilize the business. We have a lot to lose if we don't act together, Ethan said when they discussed the plan. I'm with you, Maya replied. We are stronger together. They spent days and nights working shoulder to shoulder, planning actions and protecting employees. These trials showed not only their professional maturity, but also their emotional stability. They understood each other at a glance and acted as a single team. As a result of their joint efforts, the threat was neutralized, and the alliance became even stronger. They realized that trust and cooperation can overcome any external obstacles. After all the external and internal trials, Ethan decided to close the old pages of his life. He met with former partners, settled legal and financial issues, finally separating their future together from past conflicts. All this, he said to Maya, I did for us, so that we can be free. I see, she smiled. And this is important not only for you, but also for us. They laughed together over old troubles, discussing how far they had come. Reconciliation with the past allowed them to feel complete peace, that the union no longer depends on other people's expectations or mistakes of the past. Summer brought a long-awaited feeling of harmony. Ethan and Maya had evenings together on the terrace, walks in the park, traveling, and just quiet days together. I never thought that a game that started as a bet would lead to such a real one, Maya said, holding his hand. I never thought I'd be able to trust and love so much, Ethan replied. But now I know that real life is not about status, not about external splendor, but about us. They watched the sunset, feeling the warmth and calm that came through all the trials, crises, fears, and trust. The union, which began as a joke, has become true love and partnership, mature, deep, and stable. There was no perfect fairy tale in their lives. There were difficulties, doubts, and crises. But now they knew the main thing. Together they were able to overcome everything, remaining true to themselves and each other. The story ended not with a loud ending, but with a quiet harmony where trust, respect, and love became the main characters of their lives.